Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the planning meeting of Melton Borough Council this evening. I'm Councillor Pam Posnett, Chair of Planning. There are just some housekeeping rules, so the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park, nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist anyone who needs any assistance. Please put your phone to silent during this meeting. We will be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. If members wish to speak, please raise your hand and speak directly into the microphone in front of you. Remember to turn it off once you have finished. Members voting will be done by a show of raised hands. The members here this evening are on my right, Councillor Webster, Councillor Brown, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Evans, Councillor Fisher, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Illingworth, Councillor Smith and Councillor Wood. We have a team of officers present who are to my right, our legal advisor, Tom Pickwell, and to my left, our planning development manager, Louise Parker. On my left again is Helen White, who's our planning officer, and Alex Coy, who is our planning policy officer. We also have our democratic team, service teams present, assisting with the technology and taking the minutes, Adam Green and Helen Ainge. The only apology for absence I've received is Councillor Pritchett, and unfortunately no one was able to substitute for him. We have the minutes of the meeting on the 11th of August that we deferred from our last meeting. Can I have somebody to propose these meetings if everybody's in favour of them? Councillor Brown, and a seconder? Councillor Smith. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any declarations of interest that you wish to make in respect of the items to be considered this evening? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, item 4.1, I'm not going to take part in the debate, mainly due to the fact that I've been in various discussions with the planning officer, with the agent and with the parish council, and I think the discussions have gone a little bit too in depth for me to be making a decision one way or another, so I will step out of that, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Minus my dog now, sorry about that. The Crossroads Farm, he is my neighbour. I haven't talked to him about it, believe it or not. I haven't talked about that application at all. I don't think I need to declare an interest, but I thought for the solicitor, I better just ask. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Hi, yeah, I've got a question for the solicitor. 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 are all farmers, and I've sold cattle for and to them over the 35, 40-year-old career, mainly for Melton Mowbray Market. No longer there. I haven't sold anything to them for the last 10 years. I don't know whether I class as a declaration of interest.
Can I just confirm, is that in the course of an employment or in your personal capacity you've sold sheep?
No, in the employment.
And you've got no financial connection to it other than that?
No, no.
Then I believe there's no issue there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. I did mean to say we have on our desk tonight been given the minutes of our planning meeting on the 29th of September. We won't have been able to read them, so we don't know whether they're accurate or not. So we will listen to we will do these at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Right, our first application is the planning application 2100836/4, 36 Main Road, Kirkby Bellas. I'll hand over to Helen White, who is our officer who will be doing this meeting for us, presentation tonight, and Councillor Brown has moved away from the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application at 36 Main Road, Kirby Bellas, seeks full planning permission for the resiting of 3 dwellings and the erection of 1 dwelling within the site. The application was deferred from Planning Committee on the 23rd of June this year due to the late submission of additional information by the applicant. The site is located within the open countryside, separated from the main built-up area of Kirby Bellas, as shown on the plan on the slide. Planning permission was previously granted for 3 residential dwellings within this site. In the consideration of that application, great weight was given to the fact that the 3 dwellings would replace 2 large agricultural buildings used for pig husbandry, and the resulting benefits of the removal of those buildings in terms of odours and also improved visual amenity was the reasoning behind why planning permission was granted for 3 dwellings on this site. This reason or justification no longer exists. The agricultural buildings within the site have been demolished, which has constituted commencement of the previous planning permission, so the 2017 planning permission. If we can move to the next slide, please. So these plans show the application site as approved for the 3 dwellings, and then the proposed plan for the 4 dwellings within the application site. As you can see, the internal road or access layout has altered slightly, and then there's the addition of 1 further dwelling, a total of 4. The justification put forward for the proposed additional dwelling is that the scheme has changed from 3 market dwellings to 4 self-build plots within the site. The aims nationally for self-build, and the reason why self-build plots are supported in national planning policies relates to the fact that self-build or custom build dwellings allow for innovative design and also for diversification within the housing market. In this case, there's considered to be limited benefits to diversification within the housing market because the 3 end users would be the same as the previously approved scheme, with the addition of 1 further end user who is on the self-build register. If we can move to the next slide, please. And with regards to innovative design, the design proposed in this case would be the same as the design of the dwellings proposed under the previous 2017 application. So there's been no change to the design of the dwellings, and it's not considered to be particularly innovative. As I've said, the site is located outside of the main built-up area of the settlement. Development for residential purposes in this location would therefore be contrary to policy SS2, which seeks to provide residential development in more sustainable locations. So Kirby Bellas is a rural settlement. Small scale residential development within or adjoining the settlement could be permitted under policy SS3, including criteria that substantial evidence had been provided to demonstrate that there was a specific need for residential accommodation in that location. In this case, although the proposal would provide self-build plot, there's no identified shortfall of self-build dwellings either within the parish or within the wider borough. Therefore, very limited weight can be given to the fact the proposal is for a self-build plot, and it's not considered that the conflict with policy SS2 and SS3 has been outweighed by the potential benefits of providing a self-build plot in an unsustainable location. It's therefore recommended that the application is refused.
Thank you, Helen. Are there any points of clarification, any questions you've got for Helen, please? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to be absolutely clear, I'm familiar with the site. There's an existing approval for 3, which were open market, but I think it was generally known that they were for the siblings of the main farmhouse, shall we say. And with the addition of 1 more, they're all 4 becoming self-build. Whereas there was no reference to self-build when there were 3, was there? They were just some designs that were offered, yeah?
That's correct, councillor. So planning permission was granted for 3 dwellings within the site as market dwellings. The scheme has now come forward as 4 self-built dwellings within the application site.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question, because I see in your text, you make considerable note of the fact there was a pig activity with its nuisance smells there before. And you imply in a sentence here, because it no longer exists, it's not a material planning consideration. In other words, if it still existed and was on the site, are you implying that getting 4 would have been more likely than the fact that he's demolished the piggery and the smell is gone? Because that's what worries me about this paragraph. I know Elaine Holmes feel the same way, because obviously it's setting a precedent. You're basically saying in that paragraph, if I read it rightly, that the reason that this was given permission in open countryside, which is against our policy, of course, is because of the pig activities that were taking place and the nuisance they caused.
To confirm, planning permission was granted for 3 dwellings within the application site. Those special circumstances which provided justification for the grant of planning permission for 3 dwellings within the site no longer exists. Did you want me to go further in terms of
saying a justification is if a farmer has a smelly piggery, that can be in justification for building a house on that spot if he removes that piggery. That sets a precedent, and that's my concern, I suppose.
do you want to?
Councillor Evans, I think from what I understand, that was what was put forward and the reasoning given at the last planning committee. The officers aren't giving any opinion on that now because it's not relevant to this application. But at the time, that decision and that application was approved, and that was the reason given forward. But the officers can't comment on that now that that's happened.
Councillor Chandler.
It's the most filthy farm I've ever visited in 2017, and we were briefed by Environmental Health before we went that there was an odour abatement order being issued. So I think that clears that one up. Can I just draw your attention, Mrs. White, to 1.7 about this thing that they've got, they can keep. It would not be possible to accommodate livestock in the agricultural building adjacent to the site's eastern boundary, other for the keeping of sheep for the purpose of lambing for 4 months per calendar year. Can I ask how many sheep they lamb if it's going to take 4 months? I mean, normally you lamb 1,000 in 3 weeks. That's the target these days. So how many are they lambing if they're going to be 4 months?
The restriction relating to the keeping of livestock adjacent to the approved dwelling, so the 3 approved dwellings, has a Section 106 legal agreement attached to it. And in that legal agreement, it set out certain parameters which prevented the keeping of livestock adjacent to the approved dwellings other than for the purposes of lambing within a period of 4 months within the calendar year. I'm not sure whether it specifies the number of livestock kept within the buildings.
It seems that from wearing my farming hat, it seems a long time to be lambing sheep, 4 months. Well,
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The one thing that I can't quite understand, now that all these houses are supposed to be now built in a different way, but the planning has been given for 3 normal houses, and now these are self-build. And you say that the 4th one isn't any different really to the others. So if they're self-build, are they supposed to be of a different type really? Because obviously they've got planning permission for one, but if they all want to be self-build, would they not have to start all over again? If they were going to be different, that's what I mean.
To clarify, no, they wouldn't have to be a different design. So self-build, there isn't necessarily a set criteria that they would need to follow, but the aims of planning policies supporting self-build dwellings is to support innovative design. So self-build and custom build plots are supposed to support innovative design. But you're correct, there would be no change from the design of the approved market dwellings to the proposed self-build dwellings in this case.
Councillor Webster.
Just going back to the first application, if they got rid of the piggery and they applied to put 4 dwellings there, would they got the permission then?
I can't comment on the previous application, I'm afraid.
Evans.
Yeah, just taking up, obviously, usually when we get a full planning application, we get a site design. Are you saying basically with self-build, we can give full application, but we won't know, for obvious reason, with a self-build, we won't know. Is that the difference between self-build and what we're used to? Because obviously, when you usually do a full application, you see the design of the houses, you know what you're getting. With the self-build, obviously, from what you're saying, they're creative, they can be different.
In this case, they have provided details of the design of the proposed dwellings as part of the application, and they're the elevations that were shown as the last slide. If we wanted to bring the last slide back up. So in this case, they have provided that detail as part of a full planning application, and that's the design that is proposed.
Obviously, is there any, I suppose, just as a planning committee member, just for future, is there any difference between a self-build, therefore, and a normal building constructor coming along with this kind of design? Is there anything that would change our view as a planning committee, or is it not really a planning matter?
In this case, we're considering the design as proposed. The MPPG is supportive of self-build dwellings for the reasons I outlined in terms of innovative design and diversification of the housing market. There may be examples where design is not put forward, but that wouldn't be in the form of a full planning application as it is in this case.
Any more questions for Helen? No, fine. We've got one speaker, And it's the agent, Mr. James Beverley from Fisher German. Oh, you're not Mr. I'm sorry, but you're not registered to speak.
If we can just refer to the Democratic Services team, can you confirm if there has been a request to speak?
I can confirm there hasn't been a request to speak from the Parish Council.
But I'm sorry, we've got no record of that at all. And which means that you're not registered to speak and you will not be able to speak. Do you want to answer him? No. I'm really sorry, but we do have these rules, and if I break the rule for one, I've got to break it for everybody. And so I'm really sorry, but we do have these rules. You're not registered to speak, so therefore I can't allow it. Unless you've got proof of it, of course, then that's a different matter. Well, can you show us that invitation? You just have a look at that when it's found it. In accordance with the planning committee procedures 2.10, I'm trying to think of the number 2.10, then I'm afraid if people are not registered to speak, we do not allow them to speak. I'm really sorry for that, and that you've had a wasted journey. Are you Mr. Beverley? Oh, the speaker I was asking for in the first place. I know he worked for it. But you're the agent, Mr. Beverley. You obviously know the rules. You've got 3 minutes. You know how to work the microphone, I hope. Press the face. press the face and it'll come up red. Yeah, we've moved on, you see. Okay, over to you, Mr. Beverley. 3 minutes.
Good evening, members. My name is James Beverley. I'm a chartered town planner and agent acting on behalf of the applicant. This application seeks to re-site 3 approved dwellings and deliver an additional single unit on the site of former pig sheds. The officer's report confirms that there are no substantive issues with the application, save for failure to demonstrate a need under SS3. This application must be viewed in the context that the principle for development for 3 dwellings already exists. If approved, this application will enable the applicant's 4 children to move back to Kirkby Bellas, where they grew up and where they on an ongoing basis provide support for the agricultural and business operations on the site. This support will become more and more vital as their parents age, with the level of support and presence on site only increasing as time goes on. If approved, this permission will result in the reduction of at least 3,000 vehicle movements a year to and from the site from as far afield as Sileby, albeit the number is likely far in excess of this now and will only increase as time goes by. Houses in Kirkby Bella rarely come to the market, and when they do, they're simply not affordable for young working people, let alone given the current cost of living crisis. For context, the 2-bedroom bungalows approved by this committee last year are currently advertised on Rightmove for £400,000. The average house price in the village is just shy of £500,000. This application provides the opportunity to enable the applicant's 4 children to return to the village they grew up in an affordable manner, as the houses will be built on land already in the family's ownership. We are willing for the permission to be conditional to enter an agreement that the applicant's children will be the first occupiers of the dwellings. The officer sets out that the site is not in full compliance with policy CH due to not being within or adjacent to the settlement. However, the officer's report confirms that the dwellings would not be isolated, stating the new dwellings would be viewed in the context of the neighbouring farm complex, as well as the nearby dwellings to the south of Main Road. Moreover, this additional net 1 dwelling must be viewed in the context of the principle of development for the 3 dwellings which already exist on the site. Policy C8 provides explicit support for community self-build schemes independently of any requirement of need. The applicant's children are from Kirkby Bellas, and it's not unreasonable for them to have the opportunity to return there. The officer has set out that beyond a conflict with policy SS3, the application is otherwise compliant with all other policies of the development plan. We consider that the children being from the village, their ongoing involvement in both the farming operation on site, as well as the increasing need for social care, are substantive enough justification to qualify as a need under SS3. There is simply no other affordable way for them to move to the village, and thus the only other option is unsustainable car travel. We continue to assert that there is flexibility inherent within SS3 to make a decision on a case-by-case basis. Regardless, planning legislation is
30
clear that when
seconds.
assessing planning applications, one must look at the development plan as a whole. When considered as a whole and the specific support afforded by C8 applied, this application should clearly be approved. There are virtually no harms arising from the proposals identified in the officer's report, save for a minor conflict with SS3. The benefits are, however, identifiable as set out in our submission, including social, economic and environmental benefits. This committee has a history of making pragmatic decisions in Kirkby Bellas, and we politely request you do the same here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Beverley? Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Beverley, what's the acreage of this farm if it needs 4 people to work on it?
It's not so much that they need to work on it. It's that they provide support to the family. Obviously, the parents are aging. We've not submitted this application on the basis of an agricultural workers dwelling. We're just trying to use the flexibility that we believe within SS3 to suggest that they have that is a legitimate reason for the family to live there.
I hardly think that is a good reason. What is the acreage of the farm? It's a
I'm
straightforward question.
not aware off the top of my head, I apologise.
Was it 100 acres, 500 acres, 1,000 acres? What is it?
As I mentioned, this isn't a rural workers dwelling. We appreciate that they're not going there primarily to work on the farm. It's onward support, but that is only a fraction, a part of our overall argument, which is there is the need to provide adult social
I don't
care.
think that's relevant, Councillor Chandler's in this application. I can understand why you asked the question, but it's not relevant on this application.
I think, Madam Chairman, that it is relevant because since 2017, we've been wrestling with this problem. We've got rid of the pigs. We've had outline permission for 3 dwellings. That's 5 years ago, 2017. Normally that would have expired after 3 years, but they knocked the pig buildings down. So that was a start date. And now 5 years down the line, we're still no further on and we need additional housing.
If I can just ask the speaker to help the member perhaps with their question. There was a comment there about the family providing support. Is that support to be provided on the farm? Because I think that's what the member is asking, or is it nothing to do with the farm?
It's general support in the farm during busy periods. They're not going there as farmers, and we've not applied under an agricultural workers dwelling for that reason. It's general support and in the context of they all have their own day jobs, and also to provide social support to the family. So the parents are aging and the parents also are involved with the upbringing of children. So these are journeys that are happening to and from the current places where they live anyway. So in our view, it's actually more sustainable that they're located in the village that they're going to go to anyway.
Just coming back to the councillor's question, I think if you're implying or if you're saying that there is support there to be provided within the farm in any capacity, then the member's question is valid about what that requirement is.
I don't know the exact acreage of the farm. My understanding is that they on an ad hoc basis provide support, during busy periods such as lambing. I don't have, our argument isn't this is an agricultural workers dwelling. So we're not advancing an argument that there's a specific agricultural need for them to be there. Clearly the farm's operating without them there. Our view is that they are going there to support on the farm, and there's unsustainable car journeys related to that.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Evans?
I just want to be definitive on this. What you're saying is any agricultural restrictions on these dwellings you're not contemplating. So these in no way legally are being tied to supporting the farm, because that's what it is when you have an agricultural dwelling for people who are working full-time or part-time on a thing. So these are for people who could work anywhere, do anything. You talk about sustainability, they could work in Leicester or wherever, that's their choice for obvious reasons. So even if there are 4 buildings there, those 4 buildings could be for people who work all over the county. So I'm sorry, that sustainability argument sort of goes a bit wrong really there. I'd have more sympathy if it was for support for the farmer himself with an agricultural restriction on the housing, but you're saying no. In which
Can you
case,
just keep to the question, please?
yeah,
Councillor?
I'm just asking, are you definitive there's no therefore legal, and it is legal, entitlement to restrict the people who work there as live there as agricultural workers?
No, and like I say, there would have been a method through a agricultural workers dwelling. The support on the farm is kind of a more minor point to the family support, and also, the family wanting to be back from the settlement where they grew up.
Any other questions from anybody? Oh, Councillor Wood.
Can you just help me with the transport sustainability argument? Because if the idea is that by being local, they don't need to make the trips in whilst they're helping on the farm, presumably if they're living effectively next to the farm, the rest of the year, they still have to go back out to where they were going to work and possibly go further anyway. So actually there isn't any sort of greater sustainability in transport because they're not going to be working on the farm. They still have to make trips back out to other places. So how does it become more sustainable?
Potentially true, but even if the farm was kind of out the occasion, they would still be making regular trips there because there's various familial support methods in there. So there's support for elderly relatives, and also there's support for the grandparents look after the children. But as I mentioned, these are smaller arguments. The wider point is they want to return to Kirkby Bellas, as that's the village where they grew up.
And I suppose, sorry, the other question I'd have is, if it's that 4 people want to move back, why was the original application made for 3?
The original application was done. Is a fallback position. If this application will be built and sold on the open market.
I suppose what I'm trying to get straight in my head is that if 4 people wanted to move back, why wasn't that the original application? Why was it only 3? Or were there only 3 people wanting to move back at that time?
because the finances didn't work with all the children. Like I say, at the time when the free was approved for, that was a market deal to pay for the significant investment in the pig sheds, to pay for that, so that the farmer wouldn't be at a loss. This is a new proposal. And as I mentioned, if this proposal fails, it will revert back to that 2017 position, which will be to sell the houses at a market value to recoup the money lost for the pig sheds.
That answered the question, Councillor Woods. Any other questions, anybody? No, fine. Well, thank you very much, James, for your presentation. Right, we're open for debate now. So who wants to start off the debate tonight?
I try very hard not to be first in all the time. I'm somewhat perplexed at this because we all know, we can all do the arithmetic, the difference between 3 and 4 is 1. And I challenge the statement that I think a fellow councillor alluded to it, that about the undersupply or the identified need, for self-build. I don't know what the exact word in the policy is, but surely, why does there have to be a shortfall for us to encourage self-build in this day and age? You know, because it's everybody knows that you can build a house yourself a blooming sight cheaper than a developer's going to charge you on an estate that they're building. I thought we had a policy of encouraging self-build, but be that as it may, I'm slightly I'm slightly ill at ease by the conflicting nature that we've approved 3. One of the conditions was that, or one of the benefits that swayed us was the removal of the nuisance factor of the pig units. They've now gone, so that they might as well have left them there, and then it would perhaps be a factor that would sway us into approving 4. And I think that's what Councillor Evans was supplying. They've almost shot themselves in the foot by complying with the condition. So
lots of things could have happened, Councillor Illingworth, with hindsight, but we are where we're at. And that's
I understand
what
that.
we've
And
got
where I'm at the moment is confused and perplexed and waiting to hear some more rationale before I can decide.
Is there anything you want to come back at, Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, there doesn't need to be a shortfall in self-build plots to grant planning permission for self-build houses. In this case, we're considering the proposal in the context of policy SS3, which requires there to be an identified need for the housing proposed. So an argument has been put forward that this proposal would provide self-build plots as a justification in accordance with policy SS3. And the view of officers is, as there isn't an identified shortfall for self-build plots either within the parish or the borough, there isn't a justification in accordance with policy SS3 for this type of development. So there's not an identified need in this case for self-build plots. So that's not to say we wouldn't support applications in a sustainable location for self-build without there being an identified need. But where we're looking at an application under the criteria of policy SS3, there needs to be an identified need demonstrated for the dwelling proposed. And we don't consider the fact that it is now for self-build rather than market dwellings to demonstrate that need under the criteria of policy SS3. And can I just also confirm with regards to the previous application, pre-application advice was sought prior to the submission of that application, and it was advised that an application for up to 3 dwellings was likely to be looked upon favourably, but any more than 3 due to the unsustainability of the location was unlikely to be looked upon favourably.
Thank you for that, Helen. Councillor Holmes.
Madam Chairman, I don't want to propose refusal on this actually yet, because I'd like to hear a bit more. But we've had these sorts of applications before, and where if it's a dirty farm or it's a dirty something, we're going to get, you know, and I honestly think it's wrong. Now, before your time, Helen, but a long time before your time, across the road, I've got a long memory, and we were only dealing with this application. There was another application, I think, for 13 houses across the road from that, clean site and everything, and it was deemed not necessary. So I cannot see that there's any more need for anything other than the 3 that has already been given planning permission. But as you say, because I understand this, because they took down the pig buildings, then that constitutes a start of their build. Is that not right? So you don't have to have you don't have to have footings or any, because that's how it used to be. You don't need to have footings or anything. Is that right, please?
The legislation sets out what is commencement of development. So there's legislation that sets out what is commencement of development. And in the case where demolition forms part of a planning permission, the demolition can constitute commencement of development. And in this case, because the demolition formed part of the 2017 planning application and permission, it does constitute commencement of development.
Councillor Chandler.
About half an hour ago, I said that we approved in 2017 the demolition of the pig buildings and granted permission for 3 dwellings. I'm going to move now and move the recommendation before us tonight to refuse. They've had ample time to sort these 3 houses out, and I can't see any justification for an additional one. If we give another one tonight, are we going to have one come in again in another year's time or 2 years' time? This application should commence. It's 5 years now, and I'm absolutely, I've read the papers 2 or 3 times, and I feel it's got to be refused.
Councillor Smith, you've indicated to speak. Councillor Chandler has proposed refusal.
Yeah, I am willing to second that. Perhaps I should have posed this as a question to the agent, but I'm struggling to see how this can be defended by justifiable need if the application to approve 3 houses is suddenly then just going to be sold onto the market. Surely if they need it that bad, then those 3 will be used. That maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Chandler's motion.
Right, we've had it proposed and it's refusal, and it's been seconded for refusal. Can I show of hands who is in favour of refusal, please? 7. 8. Yeah, 8. Against? Abstentions? There's just 1 abstention. That proposal for refusal is carried then by 8 votes to 1 abstention. Thank you. Right, councillor Brown is now returning to his seat. We're now on to the application for Saltby Airfield, Skillington Road, Sprosen, application number 21/01223/full. So I believe it's you again, Helen. You've got a busy night.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks to change the use of land for the storage of straw for use as an energy plant. The application has been deferred to Planning Committee due to the number of objections that have been received. Further representations have been made following the completion of the report and the publication of the agenda. However, they don't raise any additional concerns that haven't already been covered in the officer's report. The application was submitted as the level of straw storage on the site exceeds a level associated with agricultural purposes. If we can move to the next slide, please. So the impacts of previous activities associated with the site have raised concerns. This is primarily linked to a one-off event where the site was stocked with straw bales to allow for its use as an emergency store for a power station. Straw storage within the site is now carefully managed. To avoid a similar situation arising in the future, the proposal includes limitations, including limiting the hours of operation, including deliveries to the site, to between 0700 to 1900 hours, Monday to Friday, and the number of two-way HGV vehicle movements to 40, which in practice would be the equivalent of 20 vehicles entering the site and 20 vehicles leaving the site, creating a total of 40 two-way HGV vehicle movements within any 12-hour operating period. Both Leicestershire and Lincolnshire County Council Highways have been consulted on the application, and they've raised no objections to the application. Another limitation that has been proposed in the interests of residential amenity would be for the site. If we move back to the previous slide, it's probably easier to demonstrate. So for vehicles to enter the site via the Butts just to the east of Saltby, and to exit the site onto Wyville Road to the north of the application site. So it would be entering via the Butts and exiting via Wyville Road, and that's to reduce the impact and mitigate harm to residents of the Butts and Saltby adjacent to that southern access. We wouldn't seek to control vehicle movements outside of the application site. The application has been considered in relation to its impacts on highway safety, residential amenity, the character and appearance of the area, as well as environmental impacts and biodiversity. And it's considered to comply with the relevant planning policies. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Could I just draw members' attention to condition 6, which relates to the proposed hours of operation. The proposed hours of operation, as I stated, were to between 0700 and 1900 hours, Monday to Friday, but below that it states no vehicle movements on Sundays and bank holidays, and what it should say is weekends and bank holidays, or Saturdays and Sundays and bank holidays. So if members are minded to approve the application, we would need to seek to amend that condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions for Helen from the committee?
Can I just seek clarification? You mentioned 40 HGV movements per day. I presume that 40 movements means what, going in and out at the same time? Because obviously you mentioned at one stage it was 86 per day. I presume that was when there was only one entrance and one exit, because obviously that's very similar figures. Is that the case? So in other words, we're talking about an HGV movement being in and out on the same day.
So when we're looking at, as it's described, two-way HGV movements and 40 as the proposed total movements allowed within the site within any 12-hour period, that would be, with regards to the operations that are carried out, 20 vehicles coming into the site and then the same 20 vehicles leaving the site, which in total makes 40 vehicle movements. So a movement in is one movement, and a movement out is another movement. So 20 in and the same 20 vehicles leaving the site would total 40 HGV movements. So it's described as two-way vehicle movements, but it would be a total of 20 HGVs, both coming in and then leaving the site, which totals 40 movements.
To come back on that, Chair, because obviously we're not going to get a situation, I presume, where 20 HGVs are resting on the site or 40 HGVs are resting on the site and then going off, because as the operation we were described as, obviously when it's the season for collecting the straw, there'll be lots of movements in, but surely those HGVs will have to leave. They can't sit there, because obviously they've got to, if they are they going to leave empty or full? This is what I don't understand. If you presumably in the season where they're cutting, they're not going to take them straight off the site, so they've got to go somewhere. So I don't quite see how, if they're going in full and coming out empty, that still count as 40 movements.
To clarify, yes, that's correct. So 20 vehicles could come in full and the same 20 vehicles could leave empty, and that would be a total of 40 HGV movements. So when we say two-way HGV movements, a total of 40, that's not 40 HGVs visiting the site. That's the equivalent of 40 two-way HGV movements. So 20 vehicles in and 20 vehicles out, with a total of 40 movements within any 12-hour operational period.
For that, could I also clarify, obviously HGV sizes can be quite different, and I live in a rural location and I've seen this. They quite often have long trailers on them too, massive long trailers on them. Is there any restriction on the length or size of these HGVs, because the HGVs come in many forms?
So with regarding to the operation of this site, an empty lorry coming into the site would be a maximum of 17,000 kilograms. A full lorry would be between 37 and 41,000 kilograms, depending on the straw crop. But there are no, as far as I'm aware, limitations on the associated highway network with regards to HGV vehicles, and there are existing HGV vehicle movements associated with surrounding agricultural operations within the immediate vicinity of the site and the wider highway network.
I don't want to go on too long, but obviously you've got the weight.
Please don't, because of the people
Yeah.
waiting to ask
You've
questions.
got the weight restriction. Can you tell us what length they're for? Because obviously there must be a length restriction if it's that weight.
To answer, Councillor, as far as I'm aware, there are no weight or length restrictions. the proposal has been put forward with tracking information to show the size of the vehicles proposed. It's been assessed by Highways as being acceptable in highway safety terms. The sizes or the weights I've just given you are not maximum set by local highway authorities. That's information provided by the applicant with regards to the size of the vehicles that they use within their operations. So there's no limitation set by Highways with regards to this operation. It is information provided by the applicant on the size of the vehicles and the weight of the vehicles associated with the storage of straw within the application site.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Right. Have you monitored, have you actually monitored the amount of lorries going along from Crowes and Kerrill along the Saltby Road? Because there is another big, there's a chicken farm, poultry farm there. And I know that there is a lot of food going in and waste coming out. So have you monitored that and know how many lorry movements there are? We can always say 40 a day for this, but what other ones are there? And I know that it's not easy for you because County Council Highway seems as though they're pretty impotent. It obviously is the same with Lincolnshire as Leicestershire. But do you know that? Because it is quite important for the ecology of the area as well, because it's not just in the summer, is it? It's in the winter, and these lorries and things make a lot of mess on sides of roads, etc. Do they not? Thank you.
To clarify, Councillor, Highways information has been submitted as part of the planning application, and the cumulative impact of the proposed development on the highway network has been assessed by both Leicestershire and Lincolnshire County Council highways departments. With regard to the neighbouring poultry farm, I assume you're referring to the one at Barn Lodge on Saltby Road. So when the planning permission was originally granted in 2012, the information submitted with that application was for 22 two-way HGV vehicle movements. And in 2017, an application was submitted to expand the poultry unit, and that included an additional 12 two-way vehicle HGV vehicle movements, so 6 arrivals and 6 departures. So the poultry unit at its busiest times would generate 34 two-way HGV movements. But as I said, the cumulative impact of the proposed development in association with the existing site context and existing uses surrounding the site has been assessed as part of the planning application, and both Leicestershire and Lincolnshire County Council Highways have raised no objections to the application. As a maximum, that's correct.
Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Brown.
I just need a bit of clarification around points 1.9. You've mentioned 40 movements per day, 20 in, 20 out, yet 1.9 states a maximum of 40 HGVs would visit, which to me, if 40 are visiting, 40 are leaving, so that's 80 movements a day.
Yes, correct.
That is a mistake in the report. It should say 40 two-way HGV vehicle movements rather than 40 HGVs visiting the site. So apologies for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, 2 questions for myself is, 40 movements, 20 lorries in and out. How are you actually going to police that? That's my first question. If that doubled, which it could do, nothing stopping that from happening. So how are you going to deal with that and make sure the local area is not overwhelmed with HGVs? That's the first one. The second one is on the environment, and I see that you're referring to the positive environmental impact, but also looking at where the the straw and hay, etc., has been taken to 25 miles away in Sleaford with all the lorries and the diesel, etc. What analysis has been done into that against the statement that it's beneficial due to the fact of it being biomass, biodiverse, etc.? So could you just answer those two questions for me, please?
Could you just confirm whereabouts in the report it talks about the environmental benefits of the scheme?
It basically refers, sorry, if I go back to it, it refers in your report to the fact that it's servicing a station and it's environmentally friendly biomass. Just let me go back to the, sorry, I used a tablet. Let me get it right. Yeah, renewable energy plant. So basically it says the application seeks to utilize 7.3 hectares of land within the site for the importation, temporary storage and exportation of straw. The export of straw taken sleep from a renewable energy plant. So the way that reads to me is if that's like a benefit, but actually what's the mitigation against that benefit of the energy plant to the lorries, the diesel, the fumes, etc., to the local community and to the wider environment, basically?
So to clarify, I don't think any weight is given in the report to the fact that the straw would be providing kind of a renewable form of energy or contributing towards renewable energy. So with regards to how we would police HGV movements, there is a condition proposed that states it would be limited to 40 two-way vehicle movements. Within the application site, there is a weigh bridge. So they weigh vehicles coming into and vehicles leaving the application site, and they keep records of those vehicle movements. So by including that condition, if there were concerns raised that actually the number of vehicle movements associated with the proposed use, so specific to the straw stored for the purposes of the power plants, were exceeding 40 two-way vehicle movements, then we could use enforcement powers to investigate that.
Sorry? Anybody else got any questions? No? Fine. Well, thank you for that, Helen. I'd now like to call Joey Newton from Sprowson Parish Council, who is for this application. If you'd like to take a seat at the table, please. You've got the microphone in front of you. You'll see there's a face on the dial. If you press that, a red light will come on. That's it. Your microphone's on. You will have 3 minutes to speak. I'll give you a warning at the 30-second when you've got that left to speak. Okay.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Madam Chairman. As the Parish Council, on the first application, the entry of the lorries was from Crowston Kerrill to Saltby back to Crowston Kerrill. And the Parish Council looked at that and actually was concerned, but it thought it was feasible. The second application appeared with the exit down the Wyville Road onto Denton, and obviously the piece that concerns the Stonesby Parish Council is the piece from the airfield to the county boundary, and from many reasons of safety, damage to the road, damage to the verges, the Parish Council just think this is completely unacceptable change of plan, and actually would ask that it was reverted back to the original entry of coming in from Crowston Kerrill and go back to Crowston Kerrill. With rural bicyclists, rural activities of any kind, that is a single track road, and the damage to the highway, that's can be put right with money, but the rest of it, the parish council thought was completely unacceptable. Thank you very much.
If you can just remain there, I'll over to the committee now to see if anybody's got any questions for Mr. Newton. Councillor Holmes.
Mr. Newton, could I ask you why, if it were better for people who didn't go onto the Crows and Kerry, because it is quite dangerous, that road, we know that. And a friend, fellow councillor, went along the Wyville Road, and you could then get, instead of coming down to Denton, because I think that is pretty dangerous, I mean, very, very dangerous, or couldn't the lorries go, and I know it would be a mess for some time, could they not go along to Skillington and then to Great Ponton onto the A1? Is that not a way that they could go?
Absolutely. I mean, the original proposal was to come in from Preston Kerry.
Mr. Newton, if you just hang on a sec,
Sorry.
our solicitor wants to interject.
Sorry, just want to clarify something, and I'll ask the plan officer to come in if necessary. The application, I think, only conditions the entrance and the exit from the airfield. What it doesn't do is stipulate the routes at all that the vehicles will take. So I appreciate your question, Councillor Holmes, but I don't know that it's something that's going to be relevant in terms of conditioning anyway. It's only the entrance and the exit to the actual site that's within the application and can be conditioned.
With respect, I'm led to believe that people who've applied for it have implemented a one-way system for lorries as part of their suggestion to the local community. So I think that is what has been suggested to us.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I think the applicant has put forward the suggested routing, but that's not conditioned by the application. So if you were to approve it, that's not one of the conditions. So although it's been put forward by the applicants, that wouldn't be something that could be enforced unless the planning officers can confirm otherwise.
No, that's correct. We wouldn't have a mechanism for enforcing the routing of vehicles outside of the application site. There's no highway safety objection to the proposal. So normally we would only seek to control routing if there were highway safety concerns raised by the local highway authority. And we would then have to use a legal agreement to secure that routing with the involvement of the local highway authority to help enforce that routing. So in this case, as there are no objections from either Leicestershire or Lincolnshire County Council on highway safety grounds relating to this proposal, it wouldn't be enforceable for us to control the routing of vehicles outside of the site. So the only recommendation is to have an entry and an exit point, and that would, as I said, be in the interest of residential amenity to reduce the impact on the properties along the butts and in Saltby adjacent to the southern site access, not in the interest of highway safety.
A question, Councillor Holmes.
Madam Chairman, I was here on Monday to a licensing meeting, and one of the reasons was that there were objections because down at Denton there are fatalities.
Licensing's not planning, Councillor Holmes.
I'm just talking about, we said they were coming out of
we need a
Denton.
question from you.
Yes, well, could I ask then if the planning officer has asked the police how many fatalities are around on that road? Thank you.
That's not relevant to this application.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, could I ask Parish Council, please? Has the applicant made any approaches to yourselves around discussing an appropriate route or a agreement maybe that might be more amenable to your to the community?
I mean, an approach. I'm just rather flabbergasted because I thought it was part of the planning application. So I apologise for Madam Chairman, for my ignorance. I was fully aware that the new suggestion was that the entry was from Crowston Kerrill to Saltby and the exit was from the airfield on the exit on the Wyville Road going down to Denton. Mrs. Mrs. Holmes' suggestion of using the route that is the sort of main exit, which is Crowston, Kerrill, Saltby, Stones, Sproston, Buckminster, that is used on many times when the A1 is blocked and is used as an emergency road, and it's part of the highway traffic for HGVs.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Newton? No, well, thank you very much, Mr. Newton. I'd like to call Tricia Lawrence, who's an objector. So if you'd like to take your seat. You've heard me say this numerous times, but you will have 3 minutes. If you press the face, yes, your microphone's on. So when you've got 30 seconds left, I will interrupt you just to let you know. Okay, Mrs. Lawrence.
Good evening. I'm Patricia Lawrence, a parish councillor from Crowston Kerrill. I'm representing the parish councils and residents of 6 villages who've made 126 objections to this retrospective planning application, which is for industrial storage and distribution of fuel on a massive scale. The residents aren't worrying about the proposed impact. They've already lived through the intensity of the traffic, congestion, noise, and the associated pollution in the summer of 2020. When the site was operating at the proposed capacity without permission, Crowston Kerrill Parish Council received numerous complaints, which resulted in our request to MBC to take enforcement action. The precedent of 25,000 bales storage and 20 vehicles in and out per day has been debated, and the levels set at Fullback in Lincolnshire, which is closer to the energy plant with wider roads. We would ask you restrict the storage at Saltby so that the residents are treated equally. Environmentally, the growing of straw for biomass energy generation does not reclaim all the carbon released when the bales are burnt. It isn't green energy. The HGV movements to the energy plant in Sleaford from Saltby site alone will result in 126,000 miles driven by diesel glugging HGVs, which is a massive carbon load. Therefore, this proposal is in marked contradiction to your planning policy E1012 and priority of the Council's corporate strategy to move towards carbon neutrality. With regards to highway safety, I hope that you'll receive the map and you've all driven the route, and that you've seen that the roads are narrow, between 3.2 and 4.5 metres wide, and to pass an HGV travelling at 50 miles an hour safely isn't possible. Traffic surveys could not be sourced until the end of the school holidays, and they were forwarded to the officer on the 6th of October. She has forwarded them to the highways who have not yet responded. We have a copy here if you'd like to see them. The surveys show that the traffic increase on the roads and the HGVs is beyond the 30% trigger level, which requires the applicant to provide impact assessments. Traffic along the Wyville Road will increase by 103% and HGVs by 667%. For Saltby Road, these figures are 17% and 33% respectively. We wish to give you an example why this is unsafe. It will take 6 minutes to drive from site exit to 10 Acre Lane.
30 seconds.
So each HGV will spend a third of the 18 minutes on this part of the egress route. Due to the intensity proposed, a third of the existing vehicles using the lane are likely to meet them. This equates to between 10 to 27 vehicles each day meeting an HGV head-on at 50 miles an hour. At the point of potential crash, they will have to make an emergency stop and hope the HGV has got good brakes and it doesn't hit them. This is an extremely dangerous arrangement for the existing drivers on these roads.
Are you nearly at the end?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Without considering the impact on pedestrians and cyclists. Therefore, we would ask you to defer this application until the highways have responded.
If you can just remain there. Are there any questions? Councillor Brown.
So are you saying, and it's probably a question for you and the officer, sorry. So you're saying basically the data that's been collected by the highways, you believe hasn't been assessed by the officer? Correct.
The application
sorry.
didn't come in with road traffic assessments. So road traffic assessment for the route, the change route, was provided by Hungerton Farms, and it couldn't be done until the school holidays were over. So it only came in on the 6th of October. It was forwarded to the officer. We've seen that the officer did forward it to Highways, but we haven't seen a response from Highways. There was a previous response earlier, but
Yeah,
not
that's fine.
since.
Then could I ask the officer subsequently, did you forward that and did we get a response?
Yes, I did provide that additional information that came in last week to both Leicestershire and Lincolnshire County Council Highways. They have come back, but only, let me just find it, in the last day. So today and yesterday. I can read through their response. Let me just find it from Dan Green. Both of them have confirmed that it doesn't change their position with regards to their assessment of the application. So from Leicestershire County Council, it says the local highway authority note that the submitted ACT data is from Wyville Road, Hungerton, which is located within the boundary of Lincolnshire. Therefore, comments from Leicester County Council as highway authority are limited as the data falls outside of our purview. However, they note that no summary has been provided for the data by the VS Traffic Data Services or Hungerton Farms. However, the report relates to a Leicestershire planning application, and so they provide the following advice. A HGV percentage of 1% is below average. So that's the recorded percentage of HGV vehicles within the survey area. Average two-way daily flows of 156 within an AM peak hour two-way flow of 15 and a PM peak two-way flow of 14 would be considered to represent a lightly trafficked route. They comment that the data has an AM peak of 8 till 9 and a PM peak of 5 till 6, which is commonplace, and that 85th percentile speeds of 50.9 miles an hour northbound and 49.5 miles per hour southbound would not suggest an issue with excessive speed. They confirm that they would not consider that the submitted ATC would change their advice on the above planning application. And again, with Lincolnshire County Council, they said, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the reconsultation with the information submitted by Hungerton Farms. We have reviewed the report and wish to advise that our response remains unaltered from the advice provided in April. We have taken into account the additional information provided in relation to vehicle movements and mean speeds and maintain that the development would not result in a severe impact on highway safety or capacity with regards to paragraph 111 of the NPPF. We have not considered whether the information provided in the report gives rise to the requirement of an EIA assessment, as this is a matter for consideration by the Highway Authority.
That answer your query, Councillor Brown. Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Sorry, it's lovely data that they've provided, very accurate, but what I'm really hazy about now is that data for any road, or is that actually relating to a type of road? Because if that data relates to an A road, totally acceptable, but we're talking about back roads. I wouldn't want to do 50 miles an hour in my car on some of those back roads. So it seems to me that that data doesn't necessarily fit with the context of the roads that we're talking about. Do you see what I mean? That actually the data that they're giving back to you in terms of what is acceptable seems to me to be something probably akin to an A road.
To clarify, the speeds provided by County Council are the speeds recorded in the survey. So they're confirming that the speeds recorded within the survey are acceptable.
And that included back roads?
Well, I think it's at the Denton Road is it on the Wyville Road, the Denton Road junction?
Switched it off. Can you put it back on, please?
Sorry. It was on the Hungerton Wyville Road. The survey was carried out.
The Chandler?
This is temperamental. In your statement, you refer to Fullbeck Airfield, and I didn't catch what you're relating to as Fullbeck.
The
I know
power
where it
plant.
is, so
The power plant have a storage site that's already approved at Fullbeck Airfield. That site has a maximum storage of 25,000 bales, not 42,000 bales, and has a maximum of 20 lorries in and 20 HVs in and 20 HVs out. At 45
per day.
20 in, 20 out per day.
Yeah, thank you.
And a maximum at any time on the site of 25,000 bales. We've worked out that at 42,000 bales, it will take 9 months of 20 HVs in and 20 HVs out to take all of that straw out of the site to Sleaford and bring all that straw back again. So it will be a continual, the application indicates that it will just be seasonal, but it'll actually be a continual movement of lorries. We were slightly confused by Helen's comment because the actual information provided by the applicant says 40 HGVs visiting per day. So that's the a total that we've been led to believe before, which would be 4.5 months of an HGV every 18 minutes, which is what's in the highways reports as well, which we think would be intolerable for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week.
I think a lot of the bales that are still stored there isn't this year's straw, it's previous years.
It's not been moved this year. It's
No, it's previous year's straw.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mrs. Lawrence? No? Well, thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Lawrence. I'd now like to call on the agent, Fraser Jolly, to come to the table, please. Oh, we've got trio. Yeah. I take it, Mr. Jolly, that you're the speaker and the others are answering questions.
Yes, I'll be the speaker, and then if my colleagues need to answer any of the questions, they're free to do so.
Can you?
Sorry.
Yourself.
So my name's Fraser Jolly. Good evening, members. Thank you for your time. My name's Fraser Jolly, and I'm the farm manager at Saltby Farms. I've lived in Saltby Farms with my family and have done so for a number of years now. I believe with this application that your officers report.
Can you, thank you for that. Can you tell me who's on your left and who's on your right, please?
Good evening, Chair and Committee. My name's Paul Watson. I'm the planning consultant for this application.
Good evening, Chair and Committee. My name's Ian McGray. I'm the highways consultant for the applicants.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Jolly, if you're ready, you can give your presentation.
I'm sorry about that.
And you'll have 3 minutes and I'll stop you, let you know when you've got 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, again, sorry, my name's Fraser Jolly and I'm the farm manager at Saltby Farms. I have lived in Saltby with my family for a number of years now. We believe your officer's report on this application is very well considered and provides a fair and balanced review of our application. I hope, however, the information I provide with my colleagues will also assist the committee in its deliberations this evening. The straw storage is a very important aspect of our farm's diversification. It helps us invest in the farm and other environmental projects that we are currently carrying out. Saltby Farms acts purely as an emergency reserve for a renewable energy plant. We are not the regular suppliers, and so for a long period of this year, there has been very little activity to site. There has been only a handful of vehicle movements associated with the straw storage between September last year and August of this year. The plant receives straw for its daily use and from other sources across the region, and is only when supplies are interrupted that demand is such that the additional straw is required that the reserves at Saltby are called upon. Other than these limited times, the straw remains in the stacks along the concrete on the runway there, covered up by quality sheets to keep the weather off. As a significant long-term landowner, the farm has the ongoing relationship with the village and a wider community, which is extremely important to us and not something that we've been taking lightly or for granted. We have worked closely with our consultants and your officers to ensure that when straw does need to be moved from the site and restacked, the operation is carried out in a controlled manner and in order to minimise any impact. This includes, as Helen was saying, movements from 7 AM through to 7 PM, Monday to Friday, with no work carried out over weekends or bank holidays. The number of lorries, as discussed, down to 40 vehicle movements, so 20 in, 20 out of the same vehicle. A circular arrangement has been proposed for inbound vehicles arrive via Saltby Road, access leaving via Wyville Road. All of the lorries leaving
30
site
seconds.
will loose straw will be removed on site, and we employ our own sweeping vehicle to clean the roads. Due to the location of the site, the applicant has been assessed by two separate highway bodies, Leicestershire and Lincolnshire. Both councils have confirmed that they have no grounds for objection. There are objections from any statutory technical consultees having assessed the proposal carefully.
Have you nearly finished?
Planning, I am very nearly. Thank you. I am confident that if our application is supported, there will be very little impact arising from the site going forward due to careful management and limited nature of the operation. Saltby Farms is a moderate farm with a professional manner with a huge attention to detail.
I've been really generous, Mr. Jolly, but I'm
with the
afraid I've got to
environment and
stop.
community in mind. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Right, over to the committee. Any questions for Mr. Jolly and his Councillor Brown?
Yeah.
I had a mental
One of that.
gap then.
It's in myself most of the time. Yeah, Mr. Jolly, could I just ask you what dialogue have you had with the parish councils to try and come up with a solution around the traffic management situation? What you're proposing?
Well, there has been communication with the parish council, yes. We've proposed, obviously, the initial route. We then proposed a secondary route, of which Ian may wish to comment, really, to alleviate any sort of... Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Brown, if I comment on that. Thank you very much. I think as Fraser has said, when the application came in, it was suggested, albeit from the county council's point of view, and as Helen White has mentioned tonight, there isn't a safety reason to require the vehicles to go one way or the other, but it was suggested in our application that we would come in and out through the Saltby Road. Reacting to comments that were received from some residents about traffic on that road, we thought we were being helpful and saying, well, we could take the vehicles along Wyville Road if that was preferred. But as you've heard, it's really going to be, if the application, if you are good enough to approve it this evening, it will be down to the farm to manage that. Now, I think it's fair in saying that if there is a feeling in the parish and that actually using Saltby Road is the better thing, we could give an undertaking to make sure the vehicles go that way. But I think it was really an effort of trying to be helpful, but maybe we weren't being helpful.
That answered your question. Any other questions from anybody? No? Well, thank you very much indeed for your time. And I'll now ask Helen if she's got any points that she wishes to add following everybody's presentation.
I don't think so, Chair, other than just to mention, as Paul has just mentioned, that we did hold a workshop with parish councils and Chair attended, and board members attended. And it was as a result of that workshop that the rerouting was put forward as part of a wider scheme to kind of mitigate harm. So including the entrance and the exit points and the sweeping of loose straw from vehicles before they exited site, and limiting the number of bales and the height of the bales within the application site, albeit as I've said and other people have said, we wouldn't seek to control that routing as part of the planning application.
Thank you. Right, we've heard all the speakers. You've been able to ask as many questions as you wish to ask. So it's over to you for the debate. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Chair. I travelled Wyville Road more than once this morning, up and down it, and I travelled the area quite extensively, basically trying to find a way in, which eventually I did. During the course of going up and down Wyville Road, I encountered a handful of oncoming vehicles, cars. There was an element of surprise on both drivers' faces to meet somebody coming the other way on that road. I would not like to meet a 40-foot trailer vehicle on that road. Somebody would have to go in the ditch. I don't see any proposal for any passing points. Councillor Holmes will confirm I think, is it Green Lane that goes up past your farm? Is a similar width sort of road, and it has got frequent passing points. Without those, shudder to think how many impacts there'd be. I would not want to meet a 40-footer up there. So I'm very, very uneasy about the traffic on those roads. I think the point was made about speed data and everything, and I'm sure that's generic data, not specific for those particular roads, but I was told the survey was carried out on those roads. I find it incredible that a HGV hauling 40 tons could reach 50 miles an hour on Wyville Road, and I certainly want to meet it head on. Thank you. I'm very uneasy.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. The concern obviously we have here is, personally, I have a feeling I want to get refusal on this, but I'm looking at the officers. We cannot do a refusal unless it can be upheld. I agree with the agent and the applicant. This going down Wyville Road is a disaster, absolute disaster. It goes past the triple SI. It's got hairpins in it. No car meeting an HGV will be able to get by unless it goes into the ditch, as has been pointed out. I agree with the agent, possibly going Saltbeat across to Carry. And then we just learned, and I didn't realise this, the routes we were given as a planning committee, alternative routes, are not enforceable at this stage. So in other words, they can go in and out. They will have to go in and out of Saltbeat Airfield on the entrance and exits that we specify. But if the HGV wants to turn around and go back to Saltbeat and then up to Croxton Kerrill, we have no means of stopping that. So then we will have the HGVs not only entering via Croxton Kerrill, but exiting via that junction with the A607. So we have no control of that. We went down Wyville Road. No, with this situation at the moment, no HGVs necessarily could be enforced to go that way anyhow. And they could decide, and we all know what HGV drivers can be like, that the shortest route is the one they want to take. And that is the biggest concern I have here, because then also we will have 40 HGVs all going between Croxton Kerrill and Saltbeat. And there's nothing that I'm right, the planning officers have said to me, there's nothing we can do to stop that happening. And my other concern is there are statistics or data that we haven't seen as a planning committee come before us. And personally, I'd like to assess them before we go any further. So I either personally feel we need to defer this or go for a refusal, but I need officers' help if we go for a refusal.
Yeah, Yeah, I think we've all got concerns. This is, I'm a bit torn on this one, is, and maybe some of the others with a bit more environmental experience than I might be able to come in. But I think the traffic situation is an issue. That's the nature of it. You're not going to get away from that. That is there. However, to refuse it, I'm struggling. You know, I'm pretty good at my policies. I'm struggling to find anything in the NPPF for the local plan that I could hang my hat on, really. So I need to look at that, although there's maybe some stuff around 154, maybe E10, E12, maybe we could spin it C 11A or something like that. But I don't think it's enough probably to hold up an appeal. Although the concern is that we've got another report tonight with missing data. That's the way I think of that. I'd like to see all that data back in front of us to make that decision. I'm going to recommend we defer this, get the data back, and then
can I just let Louise come in, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate what you're saying with regards to the data that's been submitted. So what happened was we had an objection that was received. We then we've gone to highways, both highway authorities throughout the application. Additional information was received through an objection, which we then went back to highways with that specific information. So it's not a case of information missing. It's a case of additional information presented to us that was sent to the highway authority for their assessment. And that then came back with no additional information, no further comment. The situation was still the same. So it's not information that was missing. It was just further clarification.
To come back on that, two things. One is, this is the second meeting in a row we've got missing information at this committee. That's the first point is, and I think it should be in the report, and the report should be robust enough. And the second point is, we've heard from the parish council around looking to negotiate possibly something else, an agreement that could be done outside of it, that I think the committee should hear back. But if you're telling us we can't do that, that's fine. But are you saying we can't defer this?
I'm not obviously saying you can't defer it. I'm wondering what deferral
I'm just giving you 2
will
points.
be
One is
achieving.
the applicant and the parish council sit down and have a proper discussion robustly, because we're hearing conflicting information there from what was said and what hasn't been said. And then the second thing is that if that's not possible, I think our only other option is to approve it. So tell us what the rationale is for us not getting this report. And again, answer again, a report, a second meeting in a row, that's not robust enough as far as I'm concerned.
So my understanding is that the information is the information that's come later about the traffic and things like that. That would be the highways as the statutory consultee to provide comments on. They've said that they don't object to it. But I think just going back to what we were saying before, a lot of this refers to the issues off of the site in terms of the routing and things like that with the parish council. There's no mechanism for us to control that. So although the agent might want to work with the parish council, with others to say this is what we propose to do, there's no way that you can enforce it. If a driver goes out there and turns left or right, there's no way to do it because the highways have said there isn't an issue.
But surely
It's just hang on a sec.
So I'll give way to Councillor Wood.
Oh, okay.
Surely it is relevant, because that information may change our mind on where the access and exit points might be, which is part of the planning application. So it is relevant.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, it's only relevant to the extent of where the access and the egress is. But even then, you can't control whether the vehicle turns left or right out of that. It's purely the vehicle comes in this way and it goes out that way.
No, but it's part of us making a fully informed decision.
So the access and the egress.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. But in terms of the actual routing, once it leaves that site boundary, there's nothing that you can do to control it because of the county have said so.
Councillor Holmes.
Madam Chairman, I mentioned the police. Have we mentioned the police? Because I know, and I think everybody else knows, there have been fatalities on that road, and surely they should be asked to comment.
I think you've got an answer for us.
I believe that comes under highways again. It's not the police as a responsible authority. It's the highways that take responsibility for that.
Worth?
Thank you, Chair. It's a familiar beat on the same drum. Fancy that. Highways authorities got no objections and some amended data doesn't make them change their mind. I have no criticism of our officers whatsoever, but the fact remains that some updated responses were only given to us verbally tonight. That did not give us any opportunity to question what was put forward. That should have formed part of a report. And if the information wasn't available in time, we shouldn't be listening to this application now. So
Helen,
notwithstanding that, if
can we-
nobody else has proposed.
Can we just
deferral-
listen to Helen first, please? Helen wants to speak.
Could I just clarify the position, please, councillor? So additional information, a traffic survey was carried out by Hungerton Farms. It wasn't a traffic survey that was required to be submitted as part of the planning application. It wasn't requested by either Lincolnshire or Leicestershire County Council Highways Department. It was carried out by Hungerton Farms. As the speaker mentioned earlier, they had to wait until school started back before they could carry out the survey, which meant we only received it on Wednesday last week. And we then took that opportunity to consult with both Lincolnshire and Leicestershire County Council Highways for them to clarify their position in response to the additional information that was submitted. So it wasn't additional information submitted by the applicant. It wasn't additional information that was considered necessary for us to be able to determine the application. However, to give due consideration to that additional information, we went out to reconsultation with the relevant local highway authorities, who have both come back and confirmed that it doesn't change their position. So when I did the introduction at the start of my presentation, I confirmed that additional representations had been made, but they didn't raise any additional concerns that hadn't already been covered in the officer's report. So that was correct in that, yes, we had received this additional highways statement and it had been considered, but it didn't change our position in terms of how we considered the application. So that's the reason why it wasn't included within the officer's report.
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I said at briefing on Monday that Denton Crossroads has a notorious accident record. I said on Monday as well that I live on the county boundary, not on the 607 county boundary, but on the A52 county boundary. And Denton Crossroads is roughly 5 miles from where I live. So I'm well aware of when we get traffic rerouted through the villages because there's blockages there. And I think it's very misleading that it was in the report and nothing's been done since Monday to actually go back to either it's Lincolnshire, Denton is, to go back to them and ask them to reappraise that junction because it is bad. And we are in the application, in these papers, we are saying the traffic should come out at Denton.
Helen, do you want to come back?
And just to clarify, councillor, following on from briefing, I did contact Lincolnshire County Council and asked them if there were any recorded accidents that related to HGVs. And as I said, they've confirmed that their position didn't change.
Councillor Brown? Oh, sorry, where you indicated.
Chris, I think he was first.
You're too kind, Councillor Brown. Let's be clear, we keep going on about Denton Crossroads and all the rest of it. We have no control over the HGV when it leaves the airfield. And that is my concern also. Did Leicestershire take into account that these lorries, 40 back and forth, could all go between Saltbeat and Croxteth Kerrial rather than round the routes that we have been shown as planning committee, because they're not enforceable. The only thing that's enforceable is the exit and entrance to the airfield. And that's what we're on, because I think that's doubling up on the HGVs up to Croxteth Kerrial is a big ask.
Yeah, can we let Helen come back?
So just to clarify, we can't control the routing of vehicles when they exit the site because there's no justification to do so with regards to highway safety. But when the application was originally submitted, the routing was proposed to come into the site and to leave the site and join the A607 via the Croson Kerrial junction. So Leicestershire County Council Highways assessed the application initially on that basis and raised no objection. Then following on from the workshop and the concerns that were raised by local residents or parish councils at the workshop, the applicant put forward a suggested rerouting. Again, we consulted with Leicestershire and Lincolnshire as the local highway authorities, and they didn't object to the application. So in both cases, whether vehicles are joining the A607 via Croson Kerrial or joining the A607 via Denton, there are no highway safety objections to both cases.
Councillor Wood.
Can I just ask if the idea of the alternative route was as the result of the workshop, was that alternative plan then taken back to the parish councils for comment, or?
To clarify, we did reconsult on the submission of the additional information. So we did a full reconsultation with parish councils, ward members, and any contributors to the planning application, and further site notices were posted adjacent to the application site.
What I would say is I feel as if we're getting into ever decreasing circles here, and it seems to me that listening to the speakers, I wonder whether or not actually deferring and asking the applicant to sit down directly with the local parish council to actually discuss a plan that might work for both would actually be a good idea, and find a way through with this.
I think the problem is it still remains the same. There's no way to condition or control that. So even if they came up with an agreement, there's no enforceability of it. So I don't know what you would gain.
But at least then we could, as a committee, we can be more confident that there is a level of local agreement to what is being suggested.
The problem is if there's no way to enforce it, they can have those conversations, but that could change immediately after. There wouldn't, I don't know what benefit.
But then that is reliant on everybody being able to trust everybody else. And I think there is a greater chance of that if they've had an opportunity to discuss it than if something is enforced now, where trust then perhaps isn't going to be there.
The only advice I can give you is it wouldn't be a strong reason for a deferral, because there isn't really a reason. There is a risk of non-determination of the application because there doesn't appear to be a benefit. I appreciate what you're saying in terms of having that discussion and the trust, but I'm not sure what you would get from that in terms of something solid.
Sometimes in life, it isn't that you necessarily have something written in ink. It's actually that you have a better understanding within your community. And to me, that actually is really quite a strong thing to have, even though you haven't got something written in ink.
I completely appreciate what you said. I can only give you the advice that the applicant could go for a non-determination on that basis because there isn't a solid. That's my professional advice. That's all.
All I'm thinking is, having heard them, they seem to be keen to get some kind of resolution that everybody can live with. And I trust them as much as the local community that they want to get something that everybody can live with.
Reese now wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you. Hearing the conversations that are going on, and obviously I understand the concerns that are being raised. I think Tom makes a very valid point in the sense that these are beyond the remit of planning legislation, planning committee control. What I'm also understanding is the commitment from the applicant to talk to the parish councils and the residents. The agent is here, so I'm sure he is taking on board these comments that are being raised. The worry is that, again, they are beyond the planning remit, but obviously the agent is still in the room. So I hope that he is listening to the concerns that are being raised by members.
Councillor Chandler.
Very strict weight restrictions on their minor roads. And we have feed that comes in from near Lincoln, and it can't come across Normanton Airfield to Bottisford. It has to come up the A1 to Barrowby and then down the A52, because it would be in breach of 7.5 ton weight limits. Where are the weight limits on these minor roads? There must be some that somebody can direct the traffic. If they can tell feed lorries that are coming to us which route to take, they can surely tell somebody else what routes to take.
I can't give you a specific answer on which roads have those limits, but the lorries would have to follow that, and that would be a highway issue if they didn't comply with that. It doesn't fall within the planning remit.
Surely, with respect, Tom, that this is a reason we could go back to highways and ask this question.
The highways have already confirmed they have no objections, so there's no way to go back to them if they've confirmed that.
Chris.
Okay. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I've heard enough on this. I propose that we defer this decision. It's unacceptable as it stands to me. I'm not going to vote for it because I really, even when I came to this meeting, I thought the routes were enforceable. They're not. That means I've got to reassess with the routes, and I'll tell you why. On the actual site visits, it says to us, the inbound and outbound HGV routes up to their connection with the A607, they're the key points for the site visit. There was no point in us doing that because they're not enforceable. That is a wrong direction, in my opinion, to the planning committee. We shouldn't have been asked to visit them because they're not enforceable. I want to defer this so that we have always been told Melton Borough Council involved with community discussion, community involvement. It's clear that the community haven't got this sorted out correctly yet. And if he wants to, the agent and the applicant, they can go for non-determination. That's their choice, but at least I will feel comfortable, and I therefore propose a deferral.
I want to adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes. all take a seats, please? Oh, I'm glad you're turning that up. We're nearly dying of hypothermia over here. Ah. So do I go straight on to Roman? Right, Councillor Brown.
Okay, what I'm going to do is, I think I did make originally a recommendation to defer. I'm going to remove that from the table, but I do think I will just, Chris did come in with something else, so I'm just going to hand over there, and then if depending what happens there, I'll come back in. Is that okay?
Councillor Evans.
What I'm proposing a deferral.
What I've done is, my comment had been way at the very start of the conversation. Yeah. Out of the robustness of the process and following due process, I will take that off the table and then see where the debate goes and may come back in.
Okay. Right. The debate from my point of view before we had the 5-minute step is that I feel not confident enough to approve this. I'm aware of the ramifications of giving it, but I feel I will need more evidence. I need to see more community involvement. So for my proposal still stands that we defer this, and then hopefully the agent over the next week or two with the community can find a solution where we can move forward.
Can I have your reasons for deferral? And they've got to be policy related, not.
Policy is, I don't think I've got I came to this meeting thinking that we.
Not a policy, I'm sorry.
No, the policy is that I don't think that, I think it's EN 10, environmentally, the houses and residents of Croxton Kerrill will be impacted on this. And therefore, I wish to reassess that and look at it in terms of that policy. I think it's EN 10. No, it doesn't have to be on a policy. I was going to say, Chair, well, I've sat on many a committee where
we need reasons for deferral, and they're not reasons that come from the heart under the
heart.
The reason we need the reasons is if the applicant was to go for a non-determination, we need to be able to defend that position. So we need to understand the reason of why you want to defer it, based on planning reasons. Otherwise, it becomes difficult.
Well,
Councillor Smith.
Yep.
Is it not in the applicant and the agent's favour to agree to a deferral as well? Because we are far more likely to permit if we see community engagement. Am I like confused?
No, completely appreciate what you're saying. Obviously, the applicant and the agent, they don't get any votes necessarily. They don't get to have their say as this. So no, it's not for them to agree, but I take on board the point about what you think they might do. That's not to say that the agent couldn't go for a non-determination though.
Yes, so that's entirely up to him. I've seen nodding heads over there. I think there's more mileage we can do here. We've got community involvement. I want to see those traffic figures. As Councillor Brown says, we haven't seen those figures. And I'm now in a situation where I'm aware that the HGVs could go on the same road once they're off the airfield. I need to reassess that. And to me, that's enough for a deferral. And I think I've heard enough other committee members who feel the same way. And we need to get this right. I don't want to sit here in 6 months' time and have a serious situation in the village of Croxton Kerrill. Thank you.
And I still need a policy.
So if I can just clarify then, please, members. So the reason for the deferral is to seek community engagement between the applicant and the residents with regards to the routing and the highways. Understand the reason for deferral. What I must make absolutely clear to you at this point is this is beyond the planning remit. Those discussions can take place, that agreement can be made. However, there is nothing we can do as a planning authority to enforce, condition, or absolutely maintain that happens. So I just need to put that to members.
But you can
Smith.
enforce, sorry, could I just
Councillor
say,
Smith had got a
the
hand.
number of HGVs coming in and out of the site, you can enforce.
So just to confirm, the condition is already there for that.
I'm saying another planning application could come in, for instance, once community are involved, that says 30 HGVs or whatever. That's still part of a possible negotiation, isn't it?
No, so what we need to look at is the application before you, the conditions that are associated to it on the application, the planning officer's report, and that is all we consider at the moment. We can't look at future applications.
Councillor Smith.
So from the debate I've heard tonight and from the speakers and everything, if a motion is put forward to approve, I will be voting against it. However, there is a motion on the table to defer it. After that deferral takes place, if it takes place, and we've seen some community engagement, which I can see that the applicant and the agents want, I might be minded to approve it in the future. I don't understand the harm in letting that discussion take place when we know that both sides want it. Like, what I don't understand, like, why are we being sort of barricaded into something we don't want to do?
Not being barricaded, Councillor Smith. All I'm trying to get across, there are instances that will arise from whatever decision we make. If it's a decision that goes against officer's recommendation, then the planning inspectorate can be called in if that's what the applicant wants to do. And I don't care how many nods you can see in the audience tonight, we're not looking at that. We're trying to look at the facts, and that's why we need relevant policies. And I know that we all know there is a cost attached if the planning inspector goes against our reasons. Hence the reason I don't care which way you vote the way you want to vote, but I need you to understand that we need proper policies that will stand up when an inspector looks at the case if there is an appeal. That's all I'm trying to say.
I completely
So
understand
we've had
that.
it.
I know that we shouldn't use previous applications in determinations and everything, but a couple of months ago, I deferred an application because I wanted more involvement between the applicant and the parish council, and that was absolutely fine. I don't understand what the difference is here. That's all we want, once again.
Yeah.
I can't recall the exact application, but I think that one was where there was something that could be done within the planning remit after. I think what the advice of the planning officers has been is that even to go on with this, you're going to be doing something that the parties might agree between informally, but it's not within the planning remit. There's no way to enforce it or to condition it, but I do appreciate the point.
Councillor Wood, and then I'm having Councillor Holmes next, and then that is the end.
Just listening to all of this, sometimes my feeling is that the law is an ass, and basically it hems us in a way that it shouldn't, and stops useful, positive, ethical community dialogue. So I will second the deferral.
Had you not seconded it, Rebecca?
Sorry, maybe I didn't explicitly say it, but that was my intention, but I'm happy to let Councillor Wood second.
Right, who's seconding it then, Councillor Wood or Councillor Smith?
I'll second it then, Chair, thank you.
You'll need to speak, Councillor Holmes.
Only to say I won't be a councillor after next May, and thank goodness. I have always tried to do my best as a councillor, not doing things that probably other people want me to do, but to do what the general public want me to do. And I have done, and I have tried my best to always carry that out. And tonight, I think we are now on the right lines, deferring something. I know those gentlemen won't want to go anywhere else. They want to talk and they want to get it right. And I hope that's what we do. Thank you.
And Councillor Holmes, you're no different to any other councillor that's sitting around this table. We all have the same aim. That's the reason we become councillors. So It's been proposed and it's been seconded for deferral. Can I have a show of hands? Oh, and can I just say, sorry, councillor Illingworth has left the meeting. So can I have a show of hands who will vote for deferral? That's 5. Against deferral? Abstentions? I would vote against, but so the application is deferred. Thank you very much, all of you, for sitting there and listening to what I'm sure has been a very fraught decision for everybody here this evening. No, no, we're not working the night shift, I assure you. Right, we're now on to our next and last application of the evening, which is Crossroads Farm, Eastwell. And I'm sure you all know that this application was being called in because he's a councillor. So I believe you're taking this tonight, Alex, so over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the item presented before committee is a prior notification for the erection of an agricultural building for livestock. The development is situated on land south of the settlement of Eastwell, as shown on the map there. So the council's role in the consideration of a prior notification is to establish whether qualifying criteria set out within the General Permitted Development Order 2015, specifically Part 6, Class A for this development, has been met. It is a matter of fact whether the criteria has been met and the development be classed as permitted development, or a prior approval is required. A prior notification is usually determined through delegated powers by the planning officer. However, on this occasion, the reason why this prior notification is presented before committee is that the applicant is elected member Councillor Alan Hewson. Following assessment of the submitted information and the plans, it is considered that all the criteria has been met, and therefore it is recommended that no prior approval of the matters listed in Part 6 Class A are required. Thank you very much.
Has anybody got any questions for Alex? No? You've all seen the application. We need it proposed and seconded. Councillor Holmes has proposed it. Councillor Chandler has seconded it. Can I have a show of hands? That unanimous, it's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, sorry, Councillor Evans left the room, so it isn't unanimous. Well, it is from us that are left, so it's 2, 4. He's left the meeting. So so that was 8 people voted in favour of it, just to be sure. I'd now like to close the meeting, but I want the members to remain where they are, please, because Louise has got something she wishes to say. Thank you very much, sir, for your patience. Can I just say before we start, what's happened tonight is nothing against your